Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of I'll Allow It Nevada, your go-to podcast for insightful glimpses into the Nevada judiciary. I'm your host, Seth Easley, representing the Supreme Court of Nevada Administrative Office of the Courts. It is my pleasure today to welcome Judge Kendra Bertschy from the Reno Justice Court. Judge Bertschy serves on the bench for Reno's Eviction Diversion program. Today, we're going to be discussing how this program works and how it impacts the community. Thank you very much for joining me, Judge.
Thank you so much for having me here.
For starters, can you just give us an overview? What is Reno's housing court and the role it plays in eviction cases?
Thank you. So basically, Housing Court is a program. It's a pilot project that we created in Reno Justice Court in 2025 when we met with stakeholders. We had our very first court that we had a docket in August. And what it is a program that is focused on individuals who are facing a eviction notice. So they've received a 7-day notice of eviction, and just for non-payment of rent cases. So what that means is these are individuals who are on the verge of homelessness. They're facing eviction due to not being able to pay their rent due to some unforeseen circumstance, whether it is that they faced medical issues, unexpected payment issues, they could have faced unemployment. And now the aim is to get them back on track so that they're able to remain in their homes and have the landlords be paid.
So that makes sense, because once an eviction is on someone's record, that's kind of hard to deal with going forward in finding housing.
Absolutely. So evictions have a very dramatic impact on someone's life. If they have that eviction, it makes it less likely that someone would want to rent to them. A lot of times what we saw is that someone was facing an eviction where they just had a little hardship, where if they were able to receive some form of assistance, then they wouldn't be evicted. For those non-payment of rent cases, it's those tenants who are good tenants, but just had some life circumstance that made it difficult for them to make payments. A lot of the times, landlords wanted to work with them, but there wasn't an end in sight of when they'd be able to be caught up. And so what Eviction Diversion Court is, we worked with the city of Reno, we worked with Nation's Finest to really expedite the rental assistance time frame. Before Housing Court, according to the city of Reno's website, it would take approximately 10 to 12 weeks for a rental assistance application to be processed and finalized. The problem with that is the way that our eviction timelines work is we already would have had our first hearing in front of the court well before that date. And so we were continuing cases because landlords wanted to work with their tenants, but just had no time frame for when they would actually see the result of whether or not the individual was denied or accepted and would receive then that payment. Right. So what we did is worked with the city of Reno, helped them shorten down their time frame, so they're able to give us an answer as to whether or not a tenant has been accepted and approved for rental assistance within 30 days.
Okay, so yeah, because that's a long time frame on the tenant side and the landlord side, wondering if assistance is going to be granted or not. So it sounds like it kind of just expedites that process and keeps everyone well informed.
Absolutely. That is the main goal of our housing court, is to expedite that rental assistance while providing tenants with interventions for therapeutic interventions. One of the things that the city of Reno requires for someone to be eligible through their housing court funding program is that they complete what they call a savings and spendings plan, or a budget plan through Opportunity Alliance. So before a tenant comes to court, they'll already have provided that rental assistance application and filled it out and submitted it. They will have been pre-screened and pre-approved by the court to qualify for rental assistance. They will have hopefully have already completed that Opportunity Alliance class. And we also provide them with resources, directing them to speak with a legal aid right in Reno Justice Court, almost across the hallway from where a tenant would file their application. Mm-hmm. They have access to free legal assistance through Northern Nevada Legal Aid and Nevada Legal Services. We've also partnered with Nevada Literacy Council in order to, and also we had a partnership with the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce to try to provide employment training, resume assistance as needed. And we also have access to eligibility workers that we provide that information to the tenants just to see what other services they may qualify for. And again, that's all before the tenant first comes into contact in the court.
Wow, so that's a lot of wraparound services for sure. And I want to get more into that. But first, you mentioned, so this came about in 2025. So you mentioned a little bit that there were some driving factors, and after speaking to stakeholders, what led finally to the City of Reno's eviction diversion program? And was there a particular need or tipping point?
So what I can say is, from the bench's perspective, in Reno Justice Court, we were seeing cases where both the landlord and the tenant would come to court for an eviction proceeding, and we would have to continue the hearing. Both parties would agree, because we were waiting for rental assistance. And so the goal was to get everyone in the room together to figure out how we can get access to the most up-to-date information, how we can expedite that process and get it quicker, as well as what other interventions could we put together for those tenants, and really for the landlord's benefit too, to make sure that those tenants were stable going forward. Because that's the goal, is to have landlords get paid, to keep those tenants in their homes, and to make sure that they're able to remain there.
Right.
We were also seeing at the time, so in 2021, according to the Administrative Office of the Court's documentation, we had in just Reno Justice Court around 2,253 eviction cases or landlord-tenant cases were filed. Just so you have that information, in 2024, that number increased. And so for the fiscal year of 2024, Reno Justice Court had 4,719 eviction or landlord-tenant cases filed. Based off of what we are already seeing for 2025, we anticipate that number being around 6,000. So we're seeing an increased number of eviction cases. And this was one way that we, as a court, could collaborate with existing programs in Reno to get everyone together to keep those individuals housed.
That's a substantial amount of eviction cases being filed. So I know we'll get into it more later, but how many people has the Reno Housing Court helped out?
So far, we have assisted 99 households, and that includes over 305 people who then were not evicted from their homes. With the City of Reno, they specifically designated $500,000 from the appropriation that they received from the state for this program. We have spent and provided directly to the landlords, and by we, I mean the City of Reno has paid directly to the landlords $447,532.42 just from this program. They've provided other assistance, but this is just for the numbers with Reno Housing Court. We also had, the City of Reno did a study based off of the tenants who had been part of the program. And at that time, just from the numbers from August of 2024 to November of 2024, they had assisted 46 households. And of those 46 households, 80% remained in that property. For the nation's finest, so those who are assisting our veterans, they had assisted at that point with those numbers approximately 4 households, and 100% of those households and those individuals remained housed in that property.
Wow, that's quite an impact. That's pretty amazing. So now I would like to kind of just break down and get a better understanding for myself and the listeners. How does this program work in practice? So I know we touched on it a little bit, but when tenants and landlords get involved in this process, what can they expect?
So the first step in Nevada law is, if a landlord is going to attempt to evict a tenant, they will provide a notice of eviction. That could be a 7-day notice, a 30-day notice. It just depends on a lot of different factors. But when they receive that notice, it is the tenant's obligation to come to court and file a tenant's affidavit. When the tenant comes to Reno Justice Court, and that's any tenants, we provide them with the same assistance of access to our Reno Justice Court Self-Help Center, where they have access to those legal aid providers that I mentioned. And if they are seeking to see whether or not they qualify for rental assistance, and through specifically the housing court, they have to provide a request to participate in the housing court. We then screen them to see whether or not they would qualify for rental assistance through either the City of Reno's program or through Nation's Finest. And if they are pre-qualified, then we will provide them with access to all those resources that I mentioned, to include the Northern Nevada Legal Aid, Nevada Legal Services, Chamber of Commerce, the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services, Opportunity Alliance, and Northern Nevada Literacy Council. What then occurs is while the tenant is working on their end to get access to those providers, the landlord would then file their response. After their landlord files a response, we set that hearing. In a typical eviction case, that hearing would be set within approximately 14 days. Mm-hmm. With this program, we do set that hearing out for 30 days because that provides the rental assistance process to take place. And again, with that expedited rental assistance, we should have, if everything works correctly, according to how this program is set up, we should have a response from rental assistance before that first hearing. So the goal would be to not even have to come to court because the landlord and the tenant would have that answer and would hopefully have that rental assistance prior to that first hearing.
I see. So it's meant to be settled for the most part by the time the hearing actually is meant to occur.
Absolutely. Because that's the goal is we didn't want to keep continuing these cases because that's requires the landlord and the tenant to take time off of work to come to court, where if we have that answer, and that is one of the best parts, I think, of our housing court program, is we have a representative from the city of Reno who's present at every single one of our dockets, who can provide real-time information as to whether or not anything is missing, but more importantly, if there's any last-minute updates or last-minute acceptance and approvals, we have that real-time information.
That's amazing. So yeah, it sounds like the program just brings all these stakeholders together and it has all the information in one place and really does facilitate this expedited process, which is to the benefit of everyone, the people involved in the case, as well as general efficiency for the court.
Exactly.
You mentioned earlier that applications are screened. Can we talk a little bit more about that? What is the court looking for when they're screening applicants for this program?
When applicants are screened, it's based off of the City of Reno's requirements for rental assistance as well as for Nation's Finest. And so they've provided us with information. For example, with Nation's Finest, a individual just has to be someone who qualifies for benefits through the VA. And that's anyone in their household. So for example, if the person who's on the lease is not the veteran, but there's a veteran in that household, they can still apply for benefits. Additionally, with the city of Reno, it is an individual who is at 60% of the area median income qualifies for rental assistance. They also then have to show that they have stable income. And so that's where some of those other programs really come into place of if a tenant has a job offer, that then could qualify them for showing that they have stable income that is coming up in the future.
And it also sounds like it shows people who really, I don't want that to sound negative, but not like people who will continue to need that level of assistance.
You're absolutely right. That's one of the things that we are trying to focus on with this program, with Housing Court, is those individuals who have a preventable eviction.
Preventable eviction. Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned earlier, at what point can they apply? It's once they've been given an eviction notice, right?
Absolutely, exactly. So as soon as they receive that eviction notice, they can come to Reno Justice Court. We'd provide them with that information that they need to fill out to do the tenant's affidavit and to request Housing Court.
Hello, I hope you're enjoying this episode of I'll Allow It Nevada. We're always striving to bring you valuable insights and education, not just for judicial officers, but for anyone interested in the Nevada judiciary. If you find our content helpful or intriguing, please share your experience with your friends, family, and colleagues. Your support helps us reach a broader audience and ensures that more people can benefit from our discussions. Thank you for listening and supporting I'll Allow It Nevada. So we talked a little bit about how many people the program has helped. Broadly speaking, how much interest has there been in the program, though?
I think that there's been a lot of interest. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because, unfortunately, homelessness is a large issue in the city of Reno. We've also had a lot of discussion about affordable housing. And so this is one creative solution that we've been able to work with stakeholders to try to assist individuals before they become unhoused, and all the issues that come with if an individual's unhoused, where they could then be required to be utilizing the services of our CARES campus, which costs taxpayers approximately $66 per day. What we've learned is if individuals who are unhoused, that creates this cycle where unfortunately some of them engage in criminal activity. That costs taxpayers by having individuals being housed at the Washoe County Jail. What we've also learned is that that could also cost individuals and taxpayers money, because those individuals could then go and have to use our emergency services. And so with all of those costs, if we avert those costs by providing them with assistance on that front end of rental assistance, it actually costs taxpayers a lot less money of providing them with that rental assistance than all of the other potential costs that could come with someone who has been evicted.
Absolutely. That makes sense, because once you get into that cycle, it creates a snowball effect onto the impact of the community and the burden it places on taxpayers. Okay, so you mentioned earlier therapeutic services or interventions. Can we expand on that a little bit more? So apart from the financial assistance, what other support does the program offer, and why are these important for long-term stability?
Some of the other agencies that we've collaborated with to provide additional resources to our participants are legal aid. So having access to an attorney to ask some of those questions. That includes Northern Nevada Legal Aid and Nevada Legal Services, who have a self-help center located right in Reno Justice Court. We've also collaborated with, it was originally the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce and the Northern Nevada Literacy Council to help provide that job assistance, whether it be through assistance through resume or things of that nature. They're able to really help individuals to try to find the appropriate jobs and careers to be successful. We've also partnered with the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services to have an eligibility worker, where they're able to provide information to the tenant, to provide applications if they're warranted, to see what other services are available that they already would qualify for and may not have known that they qualify for them. And again, the other piece is Opportunity Alliance, where they are able to provide that savings and spending plan and have an individualized budget that they create with that participant. All of those services, we call them therapeutic interventions, because we are really using that therapeutic model that we've developed through our specialty courts or a therapeutic court, which is an evidence-based program to actually reduce recidivism, to save taxpayers money, and to overall just improve the safety in our communities. So we're using those wraparound services, which we look at why the individual came to court in the first place. And so we're putting that on the eviction cases to really look at that individual, meet them where they're at, find what services are necessary for them, and help give them access to that so that they don't come back in a few months or a year from now. Because that's what we consider to be a successful case. If they're able to get back and to receive that rental assistance and to then continue
Get on with their life.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. That holistic approach, it addresses the root cause of the issue. It's not just a Band-Aid. Rather, it's a proper cure, I guess you can say. So just to be clear, at what point in the process are they connected to these types of services?
So they're connected to these types of services as soon as they come to Reno Justice Court. We will provide them with access, and they don't have to have qualified for housing court in order to receive the benefit of some of these programs. For example, as soon as they come to Reno Justice Court, they can walk across the hall and have access to the Civil Self-Help Center.
Amazing. So it sounds like Reno Housing Court it's been impacting the community in a very positive way. So as the judge presiding over this, from your perspective, what kind of impact has this had on the community?
Well, we've been able to keep people in their homes and to get landlords paid. I think that in itself is such a huge impact, because you have individuals who are able to continue with their lives, to continue to being productive members of society. Just because they had one life event shouldn't mean that it leads to an eviction, which leads, as we discussed, to all sorts of really harmful things that could end up having that person be homeless, unhoused, and ending up really harming our community more.
Right. We've established it's a very impactful program, improving the lives of community members and the community at large. So how long has this program been going on?
So the city of Reno has received an appropriation from the state of Nevada since the last legislative session, and that was through Assembly Bill 396. From that appropriation, we were able to work with the city of Reno, and they had set aside or allocated $500,000 specifically for individuals who were involved in housing court. Housing court itself didn't exist until our very first docket in August of 2024. So we are a relatively new program. It's a new pilot program. But when I say we're new, we built off of principles that have been going on from different courts across the nation. Mm-hmm. We are not the first housing court or eviction diversion court in Nevada. Las Vegas also has an eviction diversion court. And we used best practices that were provided from the National Center of State Courts to develop our court program.
So less than a year old. So that makes it all the more impressive. All the people you've been able to help in that short amount of time. That's incredible.
We're really excited about it, and we really hope that we're able to continue. But of course, being able to continue depends on having the funding for rental assistance.
On that note, so yeah, funding was secured through AB 396 for an initial 2-year term. That was the last legislative session. So at this point, are there active efforts to secure more funding?
Absolutely. And in case I didn't mention, of the appropriation expires at July of this year. There are actually 2 bills that are pending in front of the legislature this session, Assembly Bill 475 and Senate Bill 283. And if either of those are passed and then signed by the governor, then that would provide for an additional appropriation for another 2 years to the city of Reno, or really to Washoe County, as well as to the city of Las Vegas, to Las Vegas and Clark County, and to the rural jurisdictions as well.
And we know the legislature they're facing some hard decisions this legislative session. Would Reno Housing Court be seeking other alternatives if that didn't necessarily go in the court's favor?
Absolutely. So the Reno Justice Court, as well as I can say all our stakeholders, are looking at other different types of funding opportunities. I know that this is a very important program to the city, and so we're really hopeful that we'll get that appropriation. But if not, we are looking at other ways to continue. I will just note that luckily the nation's finest rental assistance is not tied to that appropriation. And so in the meantime, we are able to continue with housing court, at least through Nation's Finest.
So that's something the court is dealing with. I'm sure there's been a lot learned in this relatively short amount of time since the Reno Housing Court has begun. What are some of the biggest challenges that the program has faced so far?
Some of the biggest challenges that the court has faced is really just people not having information, not having enough information about what this court is or what is needed for them to be eligible for rental assistance, or thinking that just because they received rental assistance in the past, they're not eligible now. The city of Reno has done a really great job of being willing to work with individuals and in the housing court program to see who is able to receive that funding. Additionally, the funding doesn't go directly to the tenant. It goes directly to the landlord. I just want to make sure that's clear if that's one of the challenges just with information that we've heard of, who receives the funding. And so it is the landlord who then would receive that direct payment.
While we're on that topic of maybe misconceptions, because that is kind of important to know, like that those funds are being transferred directly to the landlord. Is there anything else that you wish more people understood about this court and this program and the realities that tenants and landlords face?
Housing court is not a solution to the housing crisis or homelessness. What it is one step towards stabilizing housing, supporting landlords, and strengthening our community. It is one proactive, collaborative approach to resolving housing disputes before they escalate to an eviction. It is not a hand out, but really I'd refer to it as a helping hand up to assist those who have those tools to remain in their home, to be able to continue to make those payments, but just needed an additional extra help.
Right. One life circumstance shouldn't have it's a way to mitigate those types of things for those people who are experiencing the financial burdens, these one-off things, medical or maybe an accident, who knows. But the point is they won't be out of their homes, and it's not it won't be following them around for the rest of their lives as they seek housing.
Absolutely. And hopefully we're able to capture them in that moment when they need that assistance. Well, we can still give them that assistance before it becomes too much and just spirals out of control.
Before it gets out of control. Exactly. That makes sense. So looking ahead for the program, what would you like to see evolve or expand?
One of the things that we are working towards in Reno Justice Court is to figure out more creative ways to ensure the stabilization. So whether or not that's having a case manager or having someone to assist to really make sure that even after that first initial hearing and after the rental assistance is provided, that the tenant and the landlord have what they need to have that successful relationship going forward.
So maybe like a case manager or something. Okay. So before we close out and this very good discussion, from your perspective as the judge presiding over this, what has been the most rewarding part of seeing this program in action?
The most rewarding part is seeing the landlord and the tenant in the case where they find out that the rental assistance has been approved, and just to see the collaboration of seeing how the landlords have been working with the tenants, how they are rooting for them to be successful, and to see just the difference that a little bit of time will make on a person's life, seeing the joy from the landlords and the tenants knowing that the tenant won't be evicted has been a really crucial part of just knowing that this program is working.
Yeah, people may assume that landlords and tenants are at odds, but this program kind of just illustrates that's actually not the case. It's a lovely sentiment to hear that landlords are rooting for their tenants and that they're happy to see them overcome this hurdle that's been thrown at them.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're really seeing in housing court of these. Remember, these are the cases where they're in court not because of any fault of the tenant or because of any nuisance or habitability issue. It's really just that non-payment of rent. And so a lot of the times we have those landlords who have been really trying to work with that tenant and are overjoyed as well to see that these are the tenants that have been with them for years, who have been great tenants and just needed that a little additional assistance to get back on track.
Well, that's amazing. And Judge, thank you so much for joining me. Before we finally close this out, is there anything else you wish to share with our audience on this subject?
I really appreciate everyone who has been listening to this program and learning more about Eviction Diversion Court and the Reno Justice Court Housing Court. Our goal is to reduce homelessness, to stabilize housing, and to minimize the financial and emotional burdens of evictions for all parties, all while preserving judicial efficiency. It's a proactive, collaborative approach to resolving housing disputes before they escalate to an eviction. And we can't do it alone. And so I really appreciate all of our partners who have worked with us from those different agencies that I mentioned to the other judicial officers in the Reno Justice Court, and most importantly, the staff. Our staff has been willing to do all of this additional work to get this housing court pilot project up and running on a $0 budget because we did not receive any additional funding. We did this all on our own in terms of with using our staff because this was a need that we saw, and hopefully the community also agrees that this is a need that we needed to address.
And thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and a privilege to hear about the amazing work that your court's doing, and it just brings me and my listeners so much joy to hear about all the things that are going on within the judiciary to improve the lives of Nevadans. And it's been a real privilege.
Mine as well. Thank you so much.
A heartfelt appreciation to our guest and to everyone who's tuned into this podcast. Before we wrap up, here are a couple of quick important reminders. For continuing legal education credit, be sure to complete a certificate of attendance and email it to jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov. If you have any questions, topic suggestions, or comments, we welcome your input. You can email us at jepodcast@nvcourts.nv.gov or submit your topic ideas through our topic suggestion form, linked in the episode description. We value and look forward to hearing from our listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes of I'll Allow It Nevada. This is Seth Easley signing off. Take care, Nevada.